I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Now, Mr. President, yesterday, by a large bipartisan vote, 65 to 28, the Senate invoked cloture on legislation repealing the Iraq AUMFs of 2002 and 1991. We'll continue voting on amendments over the course of today, and members should expect final passage on repealing the Iraq AUMF as soon as tomorrow. I want to thank both sides of the aisle for their cooperation and bipartisanship. This has been a reasonable process here on the floor, with votes on amendments brought forth by our Republican colleagues. I hope this process can serve as a blueprint for how the Senate can work on into the future, in the next few months for sure. We'll have amendments without being dilatory. We'll have debate without bogging down the process. We'll look for opportunities to advance bipartisan bills as we did over the past 2 years. So again, I hope this AUMF portends good things to come. I hope it can serve as a blueprint for how the Senate can work in this session of Congress as we work together to make our country a better place. I want to thank Senators Kaine and Young, Chairman Menendez, and all the co-sponsors of this legislation for their good work. But unfortunately, there are disturbing trends here in the Senate, and one of the most disturbing is what the senator from Alabama is doing to weaken our national security. For a long time, both parties have worked together to quickly confirm the routine promotions of generals and flag officers, without partisan bickering, without needless delay. Confirming military promotions is one of the most important responsibilities of the Senate, a charge that rises far above normal political fights. But today, one member, the senator from Alabama, is blocking the routine promotion of 160 general and flag officers because he objects to women within the military getting access to reproductive care. It's very simple. The senior senator wants Alabama to make the senior senator from Alabama wants to make the health care decisions for the women of our military. And the senator from Alabama is holding up scores of military nominees who have not done anything to be treated this way until he gets his way. The women of our military are more than capable of making their own decisions when it comes to their health. They do not need the senior senator from Alabama making decisions on their behalf. And they certainly do not need any senator throwing a wrench in the vital functioning of our military when our military, work every day to keep us safe. So the senator from Alabama risks permanently injecting politics into the confirmation of routine military promotions. The senator from Alabama risks permanently injecting politics into the confirmation of routine military promotions. And that would risk our entire national security. For what? So he can push the MAGA hard line on blocking women's choice, something that most women in this country, most people in this country reject? That is beyond the pale. Now, let's be clear. The senator from Alabama's delay of 160 routine military promotions is reckless. It puts American security in jeopardy. Among the 160 nominees that are on hold, all of whom have worked to earn their promotions, all of whom we need to protect our security, include 5 three-star generals, commanders for U.S. naval forces in the Pacific and Middle East, leaders who are confronting the likes of China and Iran, and the U.S. military representative to the NATO Military Committee, which is especially important right now as Russia continues its war in Ukraine. So let me say it again. This level of obstruction of routine military promotions is a reckless departure from Senate norm. None of us want to live in a world where military appointments get routinely politicized, and that's just what the senator from Alabama is doing. He's inflicting unnecessary damage to our military leadership, and it would paralyze the Senate if all of us had to take one roll call vote after another just to confirm routine, apolitical, qualified generals and other flag officers. I know that members of both sides of the aisle feel passionately at times about certain issues. We all do. But if every one of us went to the floor and said, we're holding up every general, every admiral, every flag officer until we get our way, our military would come crashing down. It would be in shambles. And our national security would be in jeopardy. But that's just what the senator from Alabama is doing. The obstruction is dangerous, dangerous for our national security. I urge my colleague from Alabama to think about it. Why shouldn't a member on this side block military appointments? Why shouldn't any other member on that side on things they believe in just as passionately as he believes in his issue of choice? Where the proper place to take it up is on the floor of the Senate and the House as a legislative proposal, not as hostage-taking and taking hostage of our generals and admirals and people who deserve promotion. So I urge my colleagues, my Republican colleagues on the other side, to speak out and to certainly speak to the senator from Alabama and tell him how reckless this is. Several of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, to their everlasting credit, have voiced their concerns with the senator from Alabama's action. Our colleagues, our Republican leadership, should convince him to stand down and let these military promotions go through. Now, on the debt ceiling. Well, this morning, Speaker McCarthy stated in an interview that he sent a letter to President Biden demanding the two sit down to talk about debt ceiling. He's been saying that for a very long time, but for a very long time, he has not shown us any plan. To date, Speaker McCarthy has failed to unite his conference behind a single proposal that can win 218 votes. We're hearing a lot of contradictions, U-turns, by the Republican caucus in the House. Lots of outlandish proposals that would harm a lot of Americans. But as far as a plan goes, the Republican leadership still has none. When the Speaker is asked about specifics for his plan, all we get is crickets. All we get is crickets. Republicans have been flailing. One day there's a term sheet, then there's having a budget, then there's not having a budget. Now there's a supposed amorphous $4 trillion number, but the only thing missing is a real plan. You can't just pick a number out of the sky and say this is a plan. Of course it's not. You can't put just a number on the floor of the House and try to get it to pass. So when Speaker McCarthy points fingers at Democrats, all he is doing is deflecting from problems he has in his own conference. That those on the MAGA right want to pull one way, and those who are more mainstream want to pull another way, and he can't bring the two of them together. Speaker McCarthy says he wants to sit down with the president. But if he comes to the president's office with no specific plan, no specific details about what the Republicans want to cut, what are they going to talk about? The weather? If the two sit down, the Speaker would have nothing to say, because for 3 months he's been missing the one thing that he needs most, an initial plan that cannot unite 200 of his 18 votes. We Democrats have had a plan. House, Senate, Democrats. Pass it without brinksmanship, without hostage-taking. Do what we've done under President Trump and President Biden in the past when we've reached the limit of debt ceiling. So, we say to Speaker McCarthy, where's your plan? If you sit down with the president, if the two were to sit down, the Speaker would have nothing to say, because for 3 months he is missing an initial plan that can unite 218 votes. During today's interview, the Speaker also claimed multiple times that his party is considering $4 trillion in cuts. Great. Fill out the specifics where the $4 trillion exactly comes from. Put it on the floor, Mr. Speaker. Show us the plan. Have a vote. We need specifics. You can't say you're for $4 trillion in cuts if you can't point to specifics. If Speaker truly has a proposal, he should lay it out. This isn't about some amorphous, vague number. It's about having a plan. And this is the central problem with Speaker McCarthy's approach. It's not even possible to meet with the president and have a true meeting if he can't guarantee he will keep his conference together. That's why Republicans should drop their brinksmanship, drop the hostage-taking, work with Democrats on a clean, bipartisan extension of the debt ceiling, and remove this cloud that's hanging over our economy that is imposed by Speaker McCarthy's brinksmanship. On H.R. 1, the House is expected to vote this week on Republicans' partisan, unserious so-called energy package they call H.R. 1. All it takes is a brief glance at H.R. 1 to realize it's just a big giveaway to big oil, pretending to be an energy package. House Republicans' so-called energy package would gut important environmental safeguards on fossil fuel projects. It would lock America into expensive, erratic, and dirty energy sources while setting us back more than a decade on our transition to clean energy. Everyone admits we got to do something about the carbon that's causing global warming. We've seen all the changes that it's caused all across the country. And they want to move back 10 years at the behest of big oil. So it's a plan that has no support with the American people, very little. The oil interests, yes, just about nobody else. And it falls woefully short on long overdue and much needed reforms for accelerating the construction of transmission to bring clean energy projects online. Transmission is hugely important to increasing access on clean energy, but the Republican plan falls woefully short on this front as well. So I want to make clear that H.R. 1 is dead on arrival in the Senate. It's another exercise. You can go back to the MAGA supporters back home, the big oil companies who you are walking in lockstep with, and say, see, we put this on the floor, but it's not going to get anything done. We are not going to waste our time on a bill that sets America back decades in our transition to clean energy. A serious clean energy package would help ease America's transition to clean energy while ensuring that clean energy is reliable, accessible, and most importantly, affordable. Fortunately, many Democrats and Republicans understand that we need a bipartisan, bicameral approach to produce a serious energy package. Everyone knows there's going to have to be give on both sides to get it done. And we, on our side, will continue working in good faith on real permitting reform talks. But House Republicans' H.R. 1 is very simply put a non-starter. On student debt, CRA. Yesterday, Republicans introduced legislation that would end the pause on payments and overturn President Biden's historic student loan debt relief program, denying the millions of Americans with student debt the critical relief they need. Republicans talk a big game about helping working families, but they are once again showing how callous and uncaring they are by blocking that relief that would immediately improve the lives of millions of families burdened with student debt. Republicans call President Biden's plan a giveaway to high earners. That's just false. That's just malicious. That's just nasty. Under President Biden's plan, nearly 90% of relief dollars would go to out-of-school borrowers making less than $75,000. Republicans look at the facts. Let me repeat it. Under President Biden's plan, 90%, nearly 90% of debt relief dollars would go to out-of-school borrowers making less than $75,000 a year. Under President Biden's plan, no one in the top 5% of incomes will receive a penny in debt relief. President Biden's plan is not a giveaway to high earners. In fact, it's a lot of very, very wealthy people who never want to see the government help anybody except themselves who seem to push this idea of getting rid of the president's plan. President Biden's plan is a ladder up to the middle class for millions of Americans who need it most. Rather than help the privileged few, the Biden plan would benefit students of color, poor Americans, children of immigrants, and working and middle-class families across the country. These are the Americans that bear the brunt of the student debt crisis. They are the ones hurt by Republican legislation. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.